In the days when Israel had no king, the people often fell into sin, and the Lord would hand them over to their enemies. One such oppressor was Eglon, king of Moab, a ruthless ruler who held Israel captive for 18 years. Their suffering was great, and they cried out to the Lord. In response, God raised a deliverer, Ehud, the left-handed warrior from the tribe of Benjamin. Clever and bold, Ehud crafted a double-edged dagger and strapped it beneath his clothing on his right thigh, where no one would suspect a weapon. He was chosen to deliver Israel's tribute to King Eglon, a man so obese that his wealth and indulgence were visible in his very form. Upon presenting the tribute, Ehud spoke to the guards, "I have a secret message for the king." Intrigued, Eglon dismissed his attendants, leaving himself alone with the Israelites. As the king leaned forward, Ehud swiftly drew his dagger with his left hand and plunged it into Eglon's belly. Eglon collapsed, his lifeblood staining the palace floor. Ehud escaped through the balcony, locking the doors behind him. By the time the king's servants discovered their fallen master, Ehud had rallied Israel's warriors. Leading them in battle, he struck down 10,000 Moabite soldiers, securing 80 years of peace for the land. But peace made Israel complacent. As the years passed, they forgot the Lord and turned to the false gods of their neighbors. Without Ehud's leadership, their hearts grew corrupt. Soon, a new enemy arose, King Jabin of Canaan, who ruled from Hazor. His army, led by the cruel general Sisera, boasted 900 iron chariots, making Israel's warriors seem powerless. For 20 years, Jabin's oppression worsened. The highways became deserted, and Israel's warriors cowered in fear. The people once again cried out to the Lord. But this time, the deliverance would come not through a warrior like Ehud, but through an unexpected leader, a woman named Deborah. Thus, after the death of Ehud, the era of Deborah began. Deborah was unique among the judges of Israel, and also a prophetess. She was Lapidoth's wife. The Bible describes her as a woman of great wisdom and discernment, and she was highly respected by the people. She held court under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the mountains of Ephraim, where Israelites would come to her for judgment and resolution of their disputes. Unlike the men who feared battle, Deborah stood with courage. In response to the people's pleas, God spoke to Deborah. One day the Lord spoke to her, saying,
"Call for Barak, son of Abinoam. I have given Sisera into his hands."
Deborah obeyed, summoning Barak and delivering God's command. She told Barak that God commanded him to gather 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them to Mount Tabor, where they would confront Sisera's forces. However, Barak was hesitant. He agreed to lead the army only if Deborah would accompany him into battle. Deborah agreed, but warned him that because of his lack of faith, the honor of victory would not go to him, but to a woman. Barak gathered his troops as Deborah had instructed, and they marched to Mount Tabor. Sisera, commanding a much stronger army, including 900 iron chariots, advanced to meet them at the Kishon River. Despite Sisera's overwhelming advantage, Deborah confidently assured Barak that the Lord would deliver Sisera into their hands that very day. She said,
"Go! This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?"
As the battle commenced, a miraculous event took place. According to later accounts in Judges chapter 5, a sudden rainstorm caused the Kishon River to overflow, turning the battlefield into a quagmire. The chariots of Sisera, which were their main advantage, became stuck in the mud, rendering them useless. As panic spread among Sisera's troops, the Israelites overwhelmed them, and Sisera's army was completely routed. Seeing the defeat of his forces, Sisera fled the battlefield on foot, seeking refuge in the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Jael appeared to welcome him warmly, offering him milk to drink and a place to hide. Exhausted from the battle, Sisera fell asleep in her tent, believing he was safe. However, Jael had no intention of protecting him. While Sisera slept, Jael took a tent peg and a hammer and drove the peg through his temple, killing him instantly. Judges 4:21. In doing so, Jael fulfilled Deborah's earlier prophecy that the honor of Sisera's defeat would go to a woman. After the victory, Deborah and Barak sang a triumphant song, which is recorded in Judges chapter 5. Known as the Song of Deborah, this ancient Hebrew poem is one of the oldest pieces of literature in the Bible. The song praises God for delivering Israel and celebrates the courage of the tribes who joined the battle. The song vividly describes how God fought for Israel, including the dramatic natural elements, such as the storm, that contributed to Sisera's defeat. It concludes by exalting Jael for her decisive role in killing Sisera, calling her the most blessed of women, according to Judges 5:24. Moreover, they celebrated the divine intervention they received from God. The storm that neutralized Sisera's chariots illustrates the theme of God fighting for his people. The victory was not just due to military strategy, but was seen as an act of divine intervention. Deborah's leadership brought 40 years of peace to Israel. Her story is significant because she exemplifies strong female leadership in a time and culture where such roles were typically dominated by men. As a prophetess, she acted as God's spokesperson, and as a judge, she wielded authority over the people of Israel. Her wisdom, courage, and faith in God made her one of the most prominent leaders in Israel's history. The stories of Ehud and Deborah teach us that God uses unexpected people to bring deliverance. Ehud, a left-handed man, was overlooked by his enemies, but used his unique ability to defeat Eglon. Deborah, a woman in a male-dominated society, led Israel with wisdom and faith, proving that God's power is not limited by gender or human expectations. Deborah also inspires others to follow God's calling, even when they are reluctant, like Barak. Deborah and Jael demonstrated that women played significant roles in the fulfillment of God's purposes. Both stories also highlight the importance of courage and obedience. God does not always choose the strongest or most obvious heroes. Instead, He raises up those who trust in Him, whether it's a left-handed warrior, a prophetess, or even a woman with a tent peg. The ultimate victory belongs to God, and He calls His people to step out in faith, courage, and obedience to be part of His plan.